over here in Korea, we've been watching it all day because that's, we've been awake for the past several hours. It's only 7 p.m. here. So without further ado, let's get right into London. For many people who have never been to London before, they're really curious. What is the startup scene like? What is the SaaS scene like? What is the history? So could you give us a brief overview of just...
Yeah, sure. Sorry, it was a bit choppy, but I understood the first question. So a brief overview of the startup scene and SaaS in London. I mean, we have a thriving startup scene and a thriving SaaS scene in London. I've been sort of like, well, I guess kind of between 2000 and 2010, it was initially less thriving. The startup scene was good, but the SaaS scene was not as strong, and certainly not as strong as it is today. We had a couple of early, SaaS companies that, found some success. Companies like Cashflow, which did, I think, like accounting software, which was acquired by Sage, one of the first kind of early sort of exits during that period for around 20 million, which was kind of, pretty good at that time. And then we've had some companies like, there was a big exit, and still one of the biggest exits to date, Message Labs, which is, there was 4 co-founders of Message Labs. It got acquired by Symantec for 700 million. And then the founders of Message Labs now run Notion Capital, which is a VC fund which solely focuses on investing in B2B SaaS in Europe. So still one of the biggest kind of exits to date, but they were few and far between, I think, during that kind of, early period. In about sort of 2012 was when I started actually running like SaaS meetups in London, the equivalent of what we're doing today online, but back then it was in person. And actually, to my surprise, sort of back in 2012, whilst I saw that there were, hundreds, if not, probably close to 1,000 SaaS startups at the time, just in London, there was nobody, bringing these startups together, for an event to kind of meet from each other and learn from each other, which is one of the best ways that people can learn, to build and grow and scale their businesses. So we ran the first London SaaS meetup in 2012, and then from there. We've been able to, run more meetups, and the first SaaStock was in 2016. But if you look at like having around, maybe just under 1,000 SaaS companies back then, today we're looking at probably around 3,000 SaaS startups, I would say, in London alone, according to the data that I've seen sort of like online. But also it's important to note that, SaaS is not just London. Whilst London is the key hub in the UK, there's SaaS companies coming from across the UK, and, SaaS companies like Refract, sort of like up north, Sage, which is one of the biggest software companies globally, and certainly in Europe. They've got their headquarters in Newcastle. There's SaaS companies in Brighton, sort of all over. So we can see, certainly with SaaS, people are building them from wherever. But if you look at London is the main hub, and I would say the main hub in Europe as well, based on number of SaaS companies, based on amount of funding received. Now, I don't know the split on SaaS funding specifically, but last year startups in London received, around about 7 billion worth of funding, which was kind of more than double any other city, in Europe. And then if we're seeing the number of unicorns, which are companies that have, reached $1 billion in valuation, there's more coming out, from London than any other sort of European city. We're still some way behind the US in that respect, but I think now what we're seeing in the last couple of years with globalization and especially like this year with a bit of a flattening of the world because of the COVID pandemic, we are starting to see so many great European SaaS companies be built, and London-based and UK-based SaaS companies be built, and so we've got great ecosystems here to really help that development.
Sorry, I think we have a little bit of lag. Great, that was a nice little summary of London. So you mentioned Message Labs. Can you tell me more about them? Were they kind of the very first large SaaS company to be acquired? I think you mentioned Symantec for 75 million. Is that right?
Well, yeah, it was 700 million. So it was definitely one of the earliest and biggest exits. Probably is still one of the biggest SaaS exits I know of, like in the UK, to date, and in Europe to date. So yeah, I think there was just like email security, SaaS company, kind of very, very early, into leading the market during their space. Not that many competitors, around at the time, and went on to, have a great exit. I think after about sort of like 7 or 8 years, of building that company, something like that. So that was a great kind of success story, that we've seen, and obviously that's kind of one of the success stories where founders have built a SaaS company, 2x, and then started a VC fund. If we look at a lot of the VC funds and the big VC funds in the UK and in Europe, I think the majority of them haven't actually been started by entrepreneurs, but have been, started by, professional sort of investors. So Notion Capital is one of the examples where they have been, former successful entrepreneurs, and now focus specifically on SaaS. But what we're seeing, because of their access to, well, it's great to kind of see those success stories, but then with access to capital, within London, because we've got, I would say,
looks like the connection may have stopped. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but I don't see Alex anymore. So I'm not sure if he has left or I have left.
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't know. Let's see. You can hear me? Good. I think it might be your connection.
Can you guys send me a message if everything's fine?
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay with you. Oh, he's going on to a different network. We'll have him back soon. Good to see some familiar faces here in the chat. What makes the UK SaaS scene so special? SaaStock, Belinda. No, I think it's a good question. I just think London's always been, I think, a hub for commerce, business in Europe, certainly in the UK, and with that, there's been a gravitational pull for the VC funds to be here. Most of the accelerators in the UK, are based out of London. So the opportunities within London, you find that the ecosystems sort of build, themselves. If you've got access to capital, access to, educational kind of resources like accelerators, access to working spaces, access to talent, and it just kind of has that gravitational pull, which, other areas of the UK does not necessarily have. But yeah, I think we've just kind of, capitalized on this, and the ecosystem has grown organically, and yeah, there's a lot of opportunity within the UK, a lot of customer business as well. So I think what we see with a lot of the multinational SaaS companies, so the early success stories, let's say like a HubSpot, maybe Twilio, Salesforce, of course, they when they internationalize, they look at which hubs that they move over to start over their EMEA headquarters. And typically they often make a choice between like Dublin, Amsterdam, Paris, and maybe a couple of others. And London is normally, and London and Dublin are often very kind of good ones because of we speak in English, they're speaking the same language as as our American friends. So that's easy to kind of then transition and work with local talent. And then again, like what you see is that with London being a popular choice for the US SaaS companies coming over, then they're again kind of like building that ecosystem of companies and existing kind of unicorns here. And then the talent that works for those companies often go and start up their own companies. And again, it just kind of keeps kind of fulfilling itself and building and growing. So I think from that side of things that we've benefited from the US companies coming to London. And what we see also is like a lot of US companies, they might come and they start up their an office and a small office in Dublin. And again, there are a lot of like reasons to do that, but then they find that most of their customers are actually in the UK. And because the customers are in the UK, then they start to build an office in London and a sales office in London because they want to be near their customers. And then that helps them kind of grow out that office and grow out the talent pool within that vicinity. So I think we definitely had the benefits of that and the proximity to all of these great tech companies being here. And you see that again, like Qubit is a good example, whereby the founders of Qubit, they've come from Google. Obviously, Google have big hubs like all over the world, but huge presence in London. And again, we're kind of benefiting from that talent pool. You back, Jonathan? Oh, I think it's still. There we are.
All right. Do you guys hear me better now? Is this better?
You can see it. Yeah.
All right. So just like Belinda recommended, I went ahead and moved to my. I think we're having a little bit of Wi-Fi problems here in our office, so sorry about that, guys. But it looks like Alex has been talking for a while I've been gone, so that's good. Thanks for helping us out. And I know you have a tight schedule today as well. Were there any more questions in the audience for Alex before he leaves? Because we will have a panel later with everyone, but I don't think he'll be able to join. So if anyone has any final questions for Alex, please post those right now, and we will ask him whatever you guys want. In the meantime, what is your 2 sentence kind of like, what made you start SaaStock in general, since we have you here?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I kind of fell into it, but it's because I started these SaaS meetups and I was writing about SaaS and doing a podcast on SaaS, and then what I found was that was building this community both online and offline with the meetups, and I really found just enjoyment with helping people and connecting people within that the space that I was working in SaaS. At the time, I was looking for something entrepreneurial to do, and I just felt that it was adding value by connecting people and bringing them together. And when I was speaking with them, at the SaaS meetups or online, people were saying like, why don't you do a conference in Europe and bring everybody together? So I was like, it sounds like a good idea. I kind of wanted to leave my job, which was in SaaS, and do something entrepreneurial. And this seemed to be like all roads, pointing to this, right? Despite never having run a conference before. And then we ran the first SaaStock in 2016. And initially we were just thinking about just Europe, bringing founders and those within the SaaS community ecosystem in Europe together. But actually, like we found people just coming from all over the world, to the event, from India, Australia, Brazil, came because they were still having the similar challenges and wanted to meet each other and wanted to learn, from one another. And yeah, so the rest was history. And obviously, fast forward 5 years, we're still running community events sort of like locally, but obviously expanded those community events globally. So it's great to see things like SaaStock Local Seoul, come to life.
That's great. And let me ask you one more question before we move on. I know Oscar's waiting for his turn. One more question is for the Korean startups out there. They may not know much about SaaStock or the events you run. They might be more familiar with Web Summit and Rise. Those are quite larger events. I think SaaStock is a bit more focused. So can you tell them the difference in what you provide as an event rather than them going to Web Summit? Why should they perhaps go to SaaStock in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think you're right. It's much more around the focus. So like a Web Summit or a Rise, there are these monster conferences where it's like anybody that has a startup or wants to build a startup can go, or just in the startup ecosystem can go. And because of that, there's pros and cons. So if you work in a specific sector, like whether it's SaaS or fintech, it can be difficult for you to kind of navigate to the right sort of people, the right investors and the right sort of content that will benefit you specifically. So often you go there for specific reasons. And the reason that people come to SaaStock is because we're very focused on B2B SaaS. Our content is very kind of focused on helping SaaS companies accelerate revenue, helping SaaS companies with deal flow, helping SaaS companies learn how to build and grow and scale a SaaS business. So, and that if you're at a SaaStock event, if you turn to your right, that you have somebody that is in B2B SaaS, whether they're a founder, exec, or an investor, or the same if you turn to your left. The thing is, if you turn, to Web Summit, you can speak to, 100 people before you find somebody that is doing, something similar to you. So we love Web Summit and Rise, and we go there mostly to have some fun. But if you come to SaaStock, it's you do have fun, but it is also just, we find just great because it's focused, extremely valuable for those that are in SaaS. So yeah, I'd say there's key differences.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today and presenting London and giving us a little bit more information that we didn't have already. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you later.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
All right. I will invite our next presenter. That is Oscar from Munich. So, Oscar, I think I've given you the tools to join. If you see that. Hello, Oscar.
Hi, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, everything sounds good. Great.
So first of all, Jonathan, thank you very much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm also super excited to talk a little bit about Munich's SaaS and startup ecosystem.
Great. All right.
So
whenever, the floor is yours. So I'll let you present.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly share my screen and let me know. Can you still see my screen now?
Yep.
Awesome.
That's good.
So guys, happy to see you all. Today I want to show you a little bit about the Munich SaaS and startup ecosystem. Quick introduction from myself. My name is Oscar Badar. I am city leader for Munich SaaStock Local, and I'm user experience designer and growth hacker, and I help SaaS companies and startups to get new customers and to retain current customers. So quick question in the chat, guys. What's the first thing you think about when you think of Munich? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Let me just quickly check the chat here. Okay, yeah, okay, we got it. Yeah. So I wanted to give you more time, but you're actually right. It's the Oktoberfest, right? But wait, guys, there's definitely more besides just alcohol and drinks. We've got a great ecosystem going on here. And I would like to show you three key facts about Munich. And first of all, guys, did you know that there are more than 1,300 active startups right now in Munich, which is super interesting? There are like new startups, but already established startups and global players even. So we've got many startups in Munich. We've got a big event or big events besides SaaStock, I have to say, which is Bits and Pretzels. You may already heard of it. It's like a yearly event for founders, for people who want to build their own company, create their own firm. It has more than 5,000 attendees each year, and there are new startups and established companies. So people get to connect, get to learn each other, and that's basically the idea. So we've got great events here going on in Munich. And the biggest player, I would say, or one of the biggest player you may already heard of, and Personio was founded in 2015, and they recently got a new funding of 75 million bucks, so a huge player in the industry, and I would say one of the biggest startups or scale-ups now in Munich. So what do we want to do here from SaaStock? What's our passion? What do we want to achieve here? We want to connect like these, let's say 1,300 startups with big events like SaaStock, like Bits and Pretzels, and already established companies like Personio. We want to bring these people together, connect, learn together, and like create synergies, right? We have a lot of talents going on here, and we want to connect those people. So how do we do that? Our plan is to host one event each quarter. And this year in 2020, we switched to do everything online. Last year, we had offline events, and we had to switch everything to online, but it works out actually great. And we can still provide those networking effects when we do those online events. So this year in March, we started with a super interesting topic. It's about subscription monetization in the midst of a crisis. And we talked to our customer base, we talked to our community, what's most relevant to them right now. And we got a lot of the feedback, or many people told us they would like to know more about monetization, especially in this crisis, and how they can build their new pricing packages. So we got 3 pricing experts on the panel on this event: Christian Wirth from Optimal Price, Peter Loving from User Active, and Felix Krohn from the EQT group. And we talked about how to design your pricing packages and learned about the best practices in this space. The next event we had was lessons and learnings from B2B enterprise SaaS players. It was in August, and we had Michael Morse from Box, Sascha Nagel from GoCardless, Karim Hartweg from Okta, and Anki Striedel from Box. And we also talked about the learnings and lessons in enterprise sales. We talked about how to shorten the sales cycle. So we got the best practices from big players in Munich right now, and very valuable to the community. So for SaaStock, it's always super important to get those networking effects. So we start our event with like a keynote, then we have a fireside chat where all those people talk together and share their opinions, share their perspectives. And in the end, we have those networking sessions. So if you join an event from SaaStock, you really have the opportunity to talk to these people, ask a question, and get to know each other better. Our next event is going to be in December, and it's going to be about enabling growth via compliance. And we already have some great players in there. So if you want to join, let's connect. Hit me up on LinkedIn or via email, and I will gladly send you like the updates on the events, on the speakers, and happy to see you there. So thank you very much again, and back to you, Jonathan.
Thanks a lot. That was a very comprehensive overview of Munich. Very, very interesting. So hopefully the people in the audience save your questions for the end, because at the end we'll have a panel with everybody here. And so, great job. And I will go ahead and move on to the next person. So thanks again, Oscar.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm now going to invite our next presenter from Slovenia. Let's wait for him to get on the screen. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I'm going to, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm going to assume it's Matis, but I'm not sure. You have to correct me.
No, that's correct.
Is that correct? Thank you. Okay, great. So, Slovenia is a country that many Koreans don't know too much about. So it's really great to have you here to kind of educate us about the startup scene, the SaaS scene, going over in your city. So whenever you're ready, go ahead. I'll give the floor to you.
Okay, thanks for having me, Jonathan. So my name is Matic. I'm in SaaS for last 4 or 5 years, I think. My first SaaS project was Support Hero. I was stuck in Paris for 5 years, building my company, which was sold in 2018. And of the SaaStock Local team, with the first event it took place last week, I think on Wednesday. So just briefly first about Slovenia. It's somewhere between the Alps and Adriatic Sea. It's a really small country with almost, I think, 2 million people, something like that. And it's really diverse, from like Slavic background to Germanic and also Roman. So we have everything from the great entrepreneurial spirit to order from German side, and also we know how to enjoy from the Italy. So if we go to the SaaS and startup scene, yeah. By the way, I don't have any presentation, so feel free to ask any questions, and you can stop me in the comments. By the way, have you ever been in Slovenia? Please let me know.
I'll just stay on the screen with you. That way, maybe it's more comfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
In Slovenia, has anyone else in the audience? Not yet. So, and I'm sorry to say, the thing I know the most about Slovenia, probably, you're going to hate me for this.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's unfortunate. But I know where it is. I know where it is, and I think it's really cool that you guys have this ecosystem going on over there.
Yeah. Also, if you follow NBA, we have a good player, Luka Doncic, in the NBA, playing for Dallas Mavericks. So if we move away from the politics, so about the
really interesting
about the startup scene, I would say that in the early 2000s, we've seen first startup companies. I mean, the serious startup companies like Zemanta, Celtra, Vox.io, D-Labs, and also Outfit 7, which was then sold for $1 billion in 2017. So this was, let's say, the first wave of the serious companies. So mixed from marketplaces to SaaS to content-based companies. Then I would say in the mid 2000s, we got companies like Gene Planet, Nice Hash, which is a crypto company, Povio Labs is also a YC company, Flaviar and Origin Trail. So and now it's, let's say, the third wave of startups in Slovenia, which were more into the SaaS space, like Clean Shelf. Dusan is a CEO, and he was the speaker on the event last week. Also, Alan from Plio, he's not a founder, but he's the number one, the first employee at Plio. So yeah, I would say that the tech scene, it's pretty huge for a small country like Slovenia, because every small town, like from 30K citizen up, who have the either incubator or accelerator. The supporting scene is pretty good. We have, I think, one huge VC fund called Silicon Gardens, and small private investors or angel investors that are investing now more and more into SaaS companies. I just spoke with one of the investors last week before our conference, and they were like really interested in the SaaS market. So going to the history of SaaS, the problem that I see is that if you want to go global and if you want to go big, you have to be in the at least in the past, you had to be in the centers like London, Paris, Amsterdam or even in Silicon Valley or New York. But now, due to the COVID, more and more people are coming back to Slovenia with knowledge and with the connections that they got abroad. So, like Alex mentioned before, the world is flat now, and you can raise money from Slovenia, and you can build a great company from a small country like Slovenia. So if the ecosystem in Korea is not, it's growing and it's in the early stages, I think now is the right time to start working on the ideas, because you don't need to fly to USA or to Shenzhen or whenever your market is, to build a successful company. But what you need, I think, is the mentality, the right spirit, the connections, of course, which is a problem, because back in the days I went to like 3 SaaStock events in Dublin. I was trying to network and meet people, but now it's, on the one side it's easier because you can just send email, but you have to build the relationships. So that being said, let's move back to the successful SaaS companies in the region, in Slovenia. So I was actually checking if we have any soon to be unicorn in SaaS in Slovenia, but most of the companies are established abroad, so they have half of the team outside Slovenia. Like the reasons are obvious, like I mentioned before. The networking, and the capital is in London or in Paris. So I would say that we are still in the early stages of SaaS ecosystem, but we have a lot of these small investing funds and also hubs and accelerators.
We have a couple minutes left, and we're going to go a little bit late since previously we were running late. Let me ask you just a few questions, which is like kind of rapid speed. You can just answer them really quickly. So first of all, and you may not know all of them, but just your best estimate. How many startups total do you think there are in Slovenia?
That are still alive? I don't know, but I would say, I was checking the statistics before, and it's like, I think around 200 to 150.
Okay.
These are the startups that are not IMVPs, but companies that make money. Yeah.
And that's in the whole country, not just the capital. Okay. Great.
That's the whole country. But like I said, the country is really small, so you can drive from one end to the other end in 2.5 hours.
Okay. Well, it's probably a similar size to South Korea as well. How many? Who is your most famous startup currently right now?
Oh, I would say Outfit 7 is the most successful and the famous startup, because they're the only unicorn. Yeah, they sold the company 2 years ago for $1 billion. So I guess the most famous startup. That's really a good question. I don't have an answer. I would say Origin Trail. They're really in a good track. Clean Shelf, they raised 8 million this summer. Who else? Yeah, also Celtra, but they are not new. They are 10 years old.
SaaS companies, or are they all from all over the
Clean Shelf is actually a SaaS company. They're managing your app portfolio.
And then I think you mentioned a couple of investment deals. In your opinion, that you could think of, what's the biggest deal, the biggest investment deal or acquisition so far in Slovenia?
I don't know the name of the fund. I think Jure Mikuš was the investor there when they invested in Celtra. So they went from 20 people to 300 employees after their initial investment. I think that's the best investment that I can remember out of my head.
Okay, my last question. So when Slovenian startups want to go for global expansion, where do they typically start? What country do they want to go to first?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. In the past 10, 15 years, the number one place to go was Silicon Valley, San Francisco. But now, for the last year or so, I mean, I was based in France for whole my life. My business life. But I didn't choose it because of the SaaS ecosystem, but because my wife was there, so I had to go. I had to follow her. But joke aside, I think more and more startups and more founders are coming back to Europe because we have knowledge here, we have the VCs here, and it's closer. And the culture, I think we are more, we more understand the European culture. So. Yeah, for the past 10, 15 years, the number one place to go, like in 90% of the companies will go to Silicon Valley. You have some examples. They went to New York because, you know, if you're in media and publishing, then New York is the right place to go. But now more and more companies are going to either London, Berlin, or Paris.
It's really interesting because we've seen similar things here in Korea. 10 years ago, everyone wanted to go to Silicon Valley, because that's considered, the jewel, of startups. And then when they realized it's quite difficult, then they look at China. China's right next door to Korea.
Yeah.
There's this huge opportunity. But then the realization that China is a very difficult market. You can't just speak Chinese. You have to have certain connections. It's very, very difficult. And then, it was Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And again, product market fit is really important. And I think finally, a lot of Korean startups are now starting to realize Southeast Asia, which is right in our own backyard, there's more of a cultural fit, right? It's closer. There's all these reasons that make sense. And so you see a lot of Korean startups going now to Vietnam, to Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and it makes more sense, than trying to go somewhere very far away.
Yeah, I mean, before I went to software business, I tried to do business in China, and I didn't know what I didn't know. These cultural barriers were too high. I was in the wine industry. I mean, I tried. So yeah, my question to you is how you enter the market, like in China, or how you enter the market in Shenzhen, which is the Silicon Valley of Asia, I guess.
That's a really good question. So I know, Kinga, I know we're going a little bit late. I'm going to get back. We're going to go on to Krakow very soon. Let me answer this one question. So actually, my first startup, we did try to go to China. And this is really interesting because we went to Silicon Valley. We expanded within Asia, and we spent a lot of money going into China. That was huge for us. And we did it supposedly the right way, which is going into I think that I hear myself echoing now that you took the speakers off. I don't know why. So we went into Hong Kong, registered there first. Then we had a guy in Beijing that we hired who was a member of the Communist Party. We did all these things supposedly the right way, going through the right order. But at that time, there was really bad relationship between China and South Korea due to political things with the U.S. And so we pretty much lost all the money we had spent trying to enter the Chinese market. And that was a huge fail. And I think entering any market, but specifically China, you have to do lots of research. You have to have a good, a good product market fit. But also, I think a little bit comes down to luck as well. The timing and luck, I think, is kind of undervalued, that most startup CEOs don't put much into. They think, oh, it's not about luck. If I'm making a great product, then it's going to work. But there is something to be said about timing and luck, I think. Yeah. So I think you're muted, by the way.
Yeah, I said just couldn't agree more. It's
great. So,
but you have.
I think we have to move on.
Okay. Sorry.
I think the connection went down a little bit. Can you still hear me? So before you go, Matthias, could you write, or as you leave, could you write in the comments in the text box some of those startups you mentioned? I think a lot of people would love to research those, the ones in Slovenia. So if you could just write them down in the chat window. And I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye and bring on the next speaker. So thank you again, and hope to talk to you again very soon. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, and now we are bringing on our last but certainly not least, our next speaker. Let's wait for her to jump on.
Okay.
Hello, Kinga. How are you?
Hi, guys. Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Very good. Sorry for the little delay. I know we were scheduled to start a bit ago, but it was so interesting with Matthias, so we kept going.
That's more than okay. Actually, I can relate to so many things that Matic said in his presentation because I think because of our let's say geographical proximity, but also this Slavic spirit. Because I don't know, guys, if you know where Poland is. Well, we've been a bit under some media pressure last couple of days, so maybe people actually know where Poland is because of our political stuff. Yeah, don't know if you're gonna just say that in chat or should I just start with presentation? Because I have
no. So just for the audience who don't know, you know, a lot of Koreans, I would say, are very familiar with Western Europe, London, you know, Germany. But I think they know a little less about countries like Slovenia and Poland. They definitely know the country, but they may not know about the startups there. So I think this is amazing that you're able to join, as Mati says. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over the reins to you and let you present what you have. So I'm going to go away from the screen. I know you have something prepared. So.
Brilliant. Yeah, I just share my screen. Hopefully it's going to work. Let me know if you can see that. Can you? Can you see this thingy?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, I'll try. Sorry, I can't. Oh, don't know if I have. Oh, no. Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna just tell you a bit about Krakow in Poland, rather on that startup and SaaS side than on the historical side. I just recommend you coming to Krakow anytime when it's allowed because it's a beautiful city and has a huge history behind it. But also we are developing now in terms of SaaS startups and the whole entrepreneurship stuff. So, well, just a bit about me. My name is Kinga, and I'm a Krakow city leader of SaaStock. I managed to actually pull my event offline this year, which is quite extraordinary. That was end of February. And then we had just last Thursday, we had an online event, almost 4 hours, and you can check it on SaaStock site if you want as well. And we have a few speakers from Poland, but also from some neighboring countries. So, so it would be probably great for you to check it out. So actually, a bit about startups and SaaS companies in Krakow, in Poland. First of all, Poland, because I think it's important to understand that we have this entrepreneurial spirit and we really like bootstrapping in Poland. Even though we have some venture capitals, we have this very, very strong spirit of building our own stuff. We have great access to software developers. Poland is ranked very, very high when it comes to software development, and a lot of companies also in Silicon Valley use Polish developers. They either relocate to Silicon Valley or they work from Poland, as offshoring is not a problem any longer, especially in this type of remote life we live in now. So just a bit, I know it's going to be small, so I really hope that Jonathan's going to share it with you afterwards. So this is a quite new, let's say, a map of only selected Polish SaaS companies. We have a lot of sales, marketing, and HR tech SaaS companies here in Poland, and I would say that those three, like sales, rather like customer service stuff, marketing tools, and this HR tech tools are really, really strong in Poland. They've been building more and more tools like that. We also have some healthcare and IoT companies, also because we have this access to the software developers, and they are pretty good at fintech in Poland. So I would expect more from that. Why Krakow? Krakow is not the capital of Poland. The capital of Poland is Warsaw, and you can see here that in Warsaw there are like more firms based, but you will see in the next slides, actually it's Krakow that holds this place of the biggest investments in SaaS companies, and we are also called actually Silicon Valley of Europe. here in Krakow, in South Poland. Krakow's in South Poland. And the proximity to Warsaw is quite impressive. It's like 2 hours on the train, so it's not a problem to deal. And a lot of actually SaaS based in Warsaw that actually build their product in Krakow because it's a bit cheaper than in a capital city. There's a total funding. As I said, we like being bootstrapped. And there are not many companies that are actually getting this massive funding. Also, you have to know that we have a different currency in Poland. We don't have euros. We have our own currency. So for us, like €1 million means way more than €1 million, for example, in France. So we have a few companies that actually got total funding more than like €5 million. One of the most popular examples is Booksay, and it got almost more than 40 million euros. It was probably, yeah, I think it's still one of the biggest acquisitions in this part of Europe. And what definitely it's not on this chart is that we also had a quite recent acquisition by SEMrush of Prowly. Prowly is a PR software. I don't know the amount of money they had to spend, but that was quite a famous media acquisition. What's next? Like, what category best describes your product or service? This is another like survey that was in 2019. So 34% of startups in Poland are actually being developed in the SaaS model. And here you can see, probably you can't see a thing. I can barely see what's here. But I'm going to link to the source on the next slide. The subscription is one of those revenue models that bring the most revenue to those companies. And also here you can see, probably all those names don't mean much to you, but the Krakow Małopolski is actually the name of voivodeship's kind of county in Poland. They are on the second place in terms of median monthly startup growth rate. This is how do you rate the influence of the listed knowledge sources, and here's actually one of the charts that made me motivated to start with SaaStock in Poland, because startup meetups are really ranked high here, and people can see a massive potential in startup meetups. So I just decided to run something for SaaS community. Do you plan to enter a new market within 12 months? Yes, 76% of companies being developed in Poland, they want to enter a new market as quickly as possible, sometimes even too quickly. So it's like my job to tell them not to do it, because I'm not a growth hacker, but I run a content marketing agency and like PR agency for SaaS companies. So sometimes we just tell clients, it's too early, you're not ready, because obviously it takes a lot of resources to go abroad. And which markets do you plan to enter within 12 months? As Matic said, kind of like North America and Silicon Valley was this like perfect point for many Polish companies, but now it's changing. And we are into Western Europe more. Also in States, it's no longer Silicon Valley because of a very fierce competition, but it's whether like New York area is Boston area as well. So it has changed a bit, but also Eastern Europe, for example, countries like Russia. So it's been like quite changeable last few years. What's the primary reason your company doesn't have customers abroad? The product is not ready, lack of connections. We want to test the business on the domestic market first, which are probably the reasons you were thinking about. And that's why I wanted to run SaaStock in Krakow, just to show some best practices of how to tackle your SaaS growth globally. So what makes actually Krakow a perfect place for SaaS? Because we said about Poland, a bit of Krakow, but what's Krakow? Why it's a good place to start with your SaaS? First of all, we are in tech city, huge interest in SaaS startups, many VCs developing apps, tech companies inventing their own services. Also, there's a high level of proficiency, and we have a lot of expats living in Krakow now and developing their products here in Krakow. Also, there's a massive proximity. You'll see, and on the next slide, we are very close to other tech hubs in Poland, Wrocław and Warsaw, but we are very close to Bratislava in Slovakia, to Prague in Czech Republic. Berlin and Munich are also very accessible in all those times when you could actually fly there in half an hour. Those times are gone, but hopefully not for long. And there's also potential, like despite huge interest, there is a lack of SaaS-related events. There was a lack of SaaS-related events. SaaStock in Dublin was always very, very popular in Poland, and major events, startup events, are sold out quickly. We are actually the naive city when it comes to outsourcing IT globally. We have more than 10 VCs only in Krakow and surroundings, and each year 5,000 students graduate from IT-related studies. So we have all, we just tick all the boxes for developing SaaS here. And still, as I said, Warsaw still gets the lion's share of Poland's startup activity, but Krakow startup tends to score the biggest funding rounds. So it's a huge potential lying here in Krakow. 750 startup meetings annually in 2017, and now it's expected to be more than 1,000. Obviously, many of them moved online. Well, for now, all of them moved online. And that's the proximity, so you can see Poland is quite massive, I must say, but still, it's like to all those places is like an hour flight max. So it's super easy to get to those places, to get some speakers from those places, and to deal also in terms of business with those places. That was one of the meetups in Warsaw in June 2019, but it wasn't really 2018. It wasn't really not like great, but it didn't have this impact on like Krakow community. That's why I decided to do SaaStock, and hopefully I will be able to do it in person next year. For now, we have to like stick to this online events, and that's basically it. And that's my email if you want to like just know more. And I really hope that Jonathan's gonna share this presentation with you. Yeah. Well.
All right, I'm back. Thank you very much. Of course, I will share Oscar and Kinga's both presentations. Just send it to me, and I am happy to put it on the channel so everyone can access that later. Very comprehensive as well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions, but I think I might as well just ask them with the panel. So I'll invite the other guys back, and then that way, yeah. So let me go ahead and invite Matisse to come back on, and Oscar to come back on. So for everyone in the audience, if there's any questions, go ahead and ask them now. And I'll go ahead and say for everyone here on the screen, a lot of people are probably shy to ask questions, so we might have to lead our own questions probably for each other. So we have to just probably do that. As the first event, I think is probably more comfortable. So let me go ahead and start with Kinga since you went last. I heard something. I heard that there's some rivalry between Krakow and Warsaw. Is that true? Is some kind of rivalry? And if so, does that also go with the startup scene, or do you kind of compete for resources?
It is a rivalry because basically Warsaw, a couple of hundred years back, stole our Polish capital from Krakow. So it's obviously this rivalry. Like for now, it's probably coming back to business. You don't look at this that much. Like you can't just say, okay, I'm not gonna deal with you because you're from Warsaw. It's not like that. But yeah, well, as I said, it's actually a lot of SaaS companies based in Warsaw, or they are registered in Warsaw because it's maybe easier in terms of dealing with stuff like abroad, and maybe it's seen better by some companies abroad that okay, this is a SaaS based in Polish capital, but they have those all like research development teams here, software developers here in Krakow, marketing teams in Krakow, because we deal with many SaaS companies that are actually based in Poland. They are from Poland, but you wouldn't say that because they want to work globally. So we know that even though they are like registered in Warsaw, or it's what's very popular here in Krakow too, here in Poland, is to register your company obviously in states, because you deal with states, so they want to have this like states office, but it's all like based, for example, in Krakow or even surroundings of Krakow, because it's just first it's cheaper, second this access to talent pool is just insane in terms of collecting your team to develop your product. So it is a bit of rivalry, but I think it's quite like historical. Obviously we're laughing at each other and mocking each other, but I wouldn't take the massive offense.
That makes sense. Okay, and leading on that, I'm gonna go into a question for everyone. But I mentioned I noticed on Kinga's presentation, 76% of startups. I don't remember if that was just in Krakow or in all of Poland. They plan to go global within 12 months. Was that just the city, or was that the whole country?
That was for whole Poland.
Okay, so that's very interesting, because if I ask the same question to Korean startups, it would probably be a lot less. And I think for the reason it's going to be language ability and knowledge of the other countries. Korea is still, there's definitely rising English levels with younger people, but compared to European cities, it cannot be compared, the level of English. So I would like to ask the other panelists, is there any kind of issue of English when it's going global? Is language ever an issue, or do most people starting startups in your cities, are they mostly English speakers? Let's start with Oscar.
Yeah, I can say from Munich, I haven't encountered this problem, to be honest. So most founders I know can speak English pretty well. So that's not a huge problem here. Yeah, so basically that's not a problem, yeah.
So what would be the biggest problem for going global for local startups, in your opinion?
So in Munich, I think one of the biggest problem, and Kinga already mentioned it, is like when is the right timing to go globally, right? Or to go global? I think that's a huge issue. Many people just rush it. Many people want to be super quick. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Kinga, maybe you can say something to this also, but I think this is one of the biggest mistakes I can see as a growth hacker, that you don't have an MVP or you don't have like the market fit, and you just want to rush it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, because in the end, you're going to fail, even though you could possibly have a great product or a...
Yeah, like definitely for us, it's like some SaaS companies here, basically they're built, majority of them are built just to go globally. Poland is great, like Polish market is massive as well, but they want to go, globally. They all have these American dreams. They're gonna be all these unicorns and stuff. And they think, many of SaaS companies think that it's enough to just have your blog or your page translated to English, which is not the case. Because then what if it's translated to English, but you can't provide amazing customer service in English? You can't provide it in a proper time zone. You're just not ready. Your product, just leave that aside, that your product is not ready. But even like those things that actually require you to be 24/7 customer service, anyone on live chat. So it is tough with some Polish companies here to just tell them, just wait, just honestly wait. Don't burn your budget now for that. You're not ready. You have to build a team. You have to work on your product. So for some Polish companies, actually, they actually really like AppSumo here and all these aggregators, because AppSumo and all this stuff, they actually point out what to change in your product. And they say, okay, you have to work on that. You have to work on that. And such AppSumo launch is a huge test for some of those companies. And they have some users afterwards, but they just say, okay, we have those users. It's great, but we can see now that we are not ready for going global, because we can barely handle this 100, 200, 300 subscriptions. So I'm sometimes I'm really happy that they had this test. They kind of passed it, but they knew they could do better. It's like a B+ on the test, and so it's quite decent, but it's not great.
So Kinga, what I would love to know here, sorry, Jonathan, for asking a second question here. What's the response is when you say, guys, you're not ready, don't burn your money now?
I think I only had maybe like 1 or 2 companies who just said, no, you don't know what you're talking about, and so on. And then one of those actually came to me last week, and they said, okay, yeah, you were right. We were not ready. We spent like thousands on Facebook ads. No one converted. So we would like to just do it properly now. But I just had to say that we're fully booked. So sorry. But yeah, it's quite. I was cooperating with a company from Munich. With one SaaS from Munich. I can just share with you a name later, but that was the case with them. They had a really, really well-established product on the German market. They wanted to tackle English market, but their English wasn't great. Customer service probably wasn't great either, if they communicated as well as we communicated in terms of marketing stuff. And they just said, okay, that doesn't make sense. We don't have time for that. We just focus on the German market. But I share the name later with you. Definitely, you're gonna know them. They are based in Munich.
So let me ask the same question to Matis, who's waiting patiently.
Yeah, so my 2 cents on the language. Yeah, obviously we have to admit that English is not our native language, but I don't see any problems in our startups. Any troubles with the English language, even within German. I mean, a lot of people are speaking German language in the border with Italy, Italian. So that's not a problem. But you have to, once you go globally, you have to know your weaknesses and strengths. And yeah, if you're not native and you're selling to, let's say, USA enterprise market, just hire somebody that is native. I guess you will need to hire somebody that is also in sales for 15 years, because if you are a startup founder, you can sell, you can learn how to sell, but eventually you have to pass this to somebody else. In terms of going big, going global, it's a tough question. I agree to some point that, yeah, you have to be ready, but don't go global with the MVP. In Slovenia, we are quite lucky because nobody knows about Slovenia in global terms. So you can play here, you can test your product, you can test your MVP, and if it's working, and we have really strict regulations. So if it's working here, it's a good sign that you can go and test it somewhere else. You go global or not. With my previous company, Support Hero was self-help support knowledge base. We started from day one on a global market. So the first customer, they were from Paris, Agora Pulse, and the second Kissmetrics. So with the MVP, we went to Kissmetrics and they said, yeah, it's good, but what we need is also a chatbot. And we built a chatbot and that was it. It's a specific case. If you're selling to an enterprise, I would say you cannot go global on a global stage from day one because nobody will listen to you. It depends. But as an entrepreneur, I think you have to be like, it's good if you are just a little bit too soon than too late. But you have to sense, I think you get this with experience, when is the right time. So it's really hard to say for me, go now or go tomorrow. You as a founder have to fall and learn when is the right time. And we spoke about luck. I think it's not luck, it's timing, and you have to feel this timing. So for me, it would be hard to say to somebody else, you're ready now. Maybe you are not. I don't know. I learned from my past mistakes and my mentors' mistakes that it's really hard to advise and consult other startups. It's a really hard job. I mean, if you want to do it properly.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you mentioned Slovenia being a good kind of test bed to test startups, I think the same thing of Korea, because the population is very they're willing to try new things, but if there's a mistake, they're also going to be quite harsh on you as well. So I think it's great to test. Many people will fall in line and all join because people want to join the newest, greatest, most innovative platform. So they're always willing to try things. But then if you're not doing well, then they're quick to jump off as well. So I think it's great for that reason to jump into Asia. But as far as the English thing, as the initial question, it is difficult to compare European cities versus Korea. You're surrounded by many languages, so I think you guys have the benefit. So I don't want to pass any blame to Koreans who aren't as strong in English. There's a totally different culture, very, very far away from English-speaking countries. But localization is also an issue, not just the language, but the culture, right? And so whenever we go into new countries, it's not just the language we're trying to do, but maybe I've seen apps where you have these little characters on there, and they're very cute. And in Asia, that's very popular. But in Western countries, when you see a very cute character for a very serious company, the vibe might not really match, right? People in the US and Europe might not respect it as much. They might think, that doesn't seem so professional. So there's that kind of aspect of localization as well. So for any European startups who want to come into Asia, specifically Korea, I would also think, maybe you should consider having some cuteness to it. Not all the time, but something to think about, right? But yeah, I also had my own failure from, trying to go global too early, as you guys were just mentioning, right? So, we had our MVP. and we were already getting some traction early on. And me and my founding partner we were like, okay, well, it's time to go global now, right? Isn't that what the next step? You watch too many TV shows, and you get all these ambitions from these great stories of Airbnb and Uber, and you think, yeah, it's our time to go global. So we spent all the money, not just on Facebook ads, but on even offices. We had offices in about 7 different cities around the world, and we had raised a good amount of money, but that was way too soon, to really go global. But I think we make these mistakes and we learn from them. So that's always, as a first-time entrepreneur, we learn so much from our first failures. I think. So yeah.
I usually say that in first-time entrepreneur in the startup, you learn like in 10 years in the normal 9-to-5 job. And in terms of what's the limit, you mentioned Airbnb and all these Dropbox and all these cases that we hear all the time. If somebody mentions a referral program, they will go, "Oh, but Dropbox." Yeah, but I think these stories are 0.01%, which means, okay, we know where is the sky, where is the limit, which is cool. But you have to build your own foundations. You have to build your own team. So you're not there yet, and dreaming about this and then feeling of failure when you're not achieving it. It's not. I think it's not the right move. You have to know it's something in between zero and the unicorn. And there are a lot of good stories in between, like a $10 million company or $100 million company, or even $1 million company with 3 employees. It's really good. I'm skeptical about these big success stories with Facebook and all these big companies, because you can have a team of 10 people that are working together for 10 years and are doing great money and also contribute to the society as such.
Great. So technically we're out of time for the panel, but we originally were going to have a networking session. I'm not sure if we have enough people for that right now. It might just be us, the only ones who are speaking. So does anyone else on the panel have questions for anyone else? Actually, I do have one question. So for Matis, what is the correct pronunciation? I would actually assume for the capital, if I had to guess, and should I try this? I don't know. I would think it's like Ljubljana, but that's just my.
That's perfect.
Wow. Okay. First time's a charm.
That's
great.
Perfect.
I think for native English speakers, the J looks like a J, but I know in Europe it's many times like an I or a Y sound, right? So thank you for that. And I'm sorry for butchering any other pronunciations during today's thing, whether it was your names or your country or your cities.
You would struggle with my maiden name.
Oh, I thought Edward.
2 months ago.
I was thinking, okay, Edward sounds pretty English. Maybe she's like mixed, Polish and English or something.
No, I'm just married to a Brit, so yeah, just got his surname. But you would struggle with my maiden name, so it's good we don't really do that back in September.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your recent marriage. But so, what is the pronunciation of your maiden name, if I may ask?
Oh God, you don't want to know.
No, okay, it's that difficult. Okay.
I probably can't. I don't think I can pronounce it right. Yeah, there are like 2 ways you can do it, and I don't know which one is correct. So it's good. I should know.
Now that you've changed your name, you've probably forgotten how to pronounce your name, right? It's that difficult.
Yeah. Actually, I can. That's what's really actually funny. That since I got my new surname, it's way easier for me to deal, for example, with the UK. And I was testing a few things, and it's like that helped me a lot to actually get into some UK companies I wanted to collaborate with or just do something together, like some projects together. So it helped a lot, and I thought it's just kind of a fad, and I would say it can't really change that much, but back in my experience with the UK and living in the UK as well, I can say it really helps having an English surname. A bit harsh, but that's the truth. Yeah.
That is a very interesting point. A lot of Koreans will choose to have an English name, because their given names might be too difficult for people to pronounce if they're not familiar with Korean names. Now, most Korean family names are quite easy and short, like Kim, Lee, Park. You may have seen some of those names before. They're very short, but their given names, you know, can be difficult, I think, unless you are very familiar with Korea. So they do that in business as well. They'll choose an English name just because it just makes things easier. If you're in sales, it makes sense, right? If you're dealing with English-speaking countries. So anyway, that was a little tangent there. I think, guys, that was good for today. You know, thanks a lot for coming. I know this was really short notice, but thanks for coming and being prepared and, you know, discussing your city's ecosystems and everything. So I really appreciate it for our first Korea event. I'll be glad to join all of your events as well in your cities. I look forward to that. I am tempted to try this networking breakout rooms. How many of you have tried that before with the system? Matis, you've tried it. And what do you think?
No, it's great. It's working perfectly. You can choose up to, I think the minimum is 6 people. So you have to have 6 people on the event, and then now you can do 2 rooms.
So it looks just like this, though, right? 4 people to a room, 6 people to a room. You'll see either your faces just like we have it here.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm assuming since our audience is quiet and not asking too much questions, I'm assuming it's probably not a good idea to do it today, but I will probably try it next time. So I'll go ahead and I think we'll sign off for now. But again, thank you all very much, Oscar, Kinga, Matis, for insights into Munich, Ljubljana, and Krakow. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
I'm signing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.